Welcome to the second of a four-part series on Google Analytics, tracking the traffic on your website. In this second part of the series, I'll review the key metrics you'll find in Google Analytics, explain them, and try to give you a sense of what your practice should be achieving for each metric. We'll focus our time on the main data in the dashboard report. By default, Analytics will show you your traffic for the last month. Now this can be easily changed by selecting the date drop-down, changing the dates, or comparing one set of dates to another. Now comparing the dates across 2 months, for example, is an excellent way to see how your site traffic has changed during those 2 months. Notice the green and blue lines that represent the most recent traffic and, of course, the older traffic. The dashboard has now been updated to show recent data and previous data, as well as the change in data between the two time periods. As I mentioned, this is extremely useful in seeing the changes to your traffic. If you have enough data, I would say feel free to compare your current traffic to the same time period from a year ago and see what's changed. Now, there are 6 data sets in your dashboard report. They're the key to getting a solid understanding of the essence of what's happening on your website. So we'll start with metric 1, visits. If somebody comes to your website from Google, another search engine, or really however they came to your site, that's called a visit. It doesn't matter how long they came for, or how many pages they looked at, as long as they got to your site and loaded up even one page, that's a visit. Now Analytics can't tell the name, email, phone number, etc. of any visitor that came to your site, but they can tell roughly what geographic area the person came from. Now you're wondering, okay, how many visits should my website have? That's a tough question to answer, as it really depends on a whole lot of factors, like is your practice in downtown New York or in Pell City, Alabama? How many ODs do you have in the practice? Do you do search engine optimization or pay-per-click or social media? All these factors affect the number of visits to your website. So the best I can do is really tell you that on average, just keep in mind all these factors for your website should likely be getting about 150 to 200 visitors per month. Now, you should adjust that number up or down depending on the factors that I just mentioned above. Also keep in mind, no matter how many visitors you're getting, you can always get more visitors to your website. And also keep in mind that visitors really can change drastically from one month to the next, depending on the time of year, vacations, the economy, and other social factors that really don't have anything to do with your website itself. So keep that in mind when you see your traffic go, let's say, down in June and July, but skyrocket in back to school August. The next metric, page views. Now this number represents the number of web pages that all your visitors looked at. This number is simply a multiplication of the average number of pages per visit and the number of visits to your website. So really our focus should be on the number of pages per visit. This represents the average number of pages that a visitor looks at when they come to your site. We'll talk about how to segment this traffic in the next part of the series, but for now, this number gives us an indication of the quality of the visitors to your website. Now, the higher the pages per visit in general, the more interested people are in your site. And no, it doesn't mean that they just can't find what they're looking for, because people would sooner leave your site than hunt around your site forever looking. So if your site is getting between 2.5 and 3 pages per visit, this means that the right people are likely coming to your site, people who are interested in your services. If this number is below 2, you have a problem, and you should get it looked at sooner rather than later, if something's wrong with the traffic you're getting or something is wrong with your site. You're welcome to contact me. I'm happy to have a look and see what the issue might be. Next metric, the bounce rate. This is my favorite metric. It's such an odd name, but you'll see it makes sense. A bounce rate can be explained as follows. If a person comes to your site and looks at one page and leaves, they've effectively bounced in and out of your site. That's the bounce rate. So the bounce rate tells you the percentage of people that came to your site, looked at one page, and left. Now obviously the lower this number is, the better, as it means that more people looked at more than one page on your site. But keep in mind, however, that you will always have a decent percentage of visitors who only want to look at one page on your site. The biggest example is from existing patients who really only need a phone number, a name, or an address of some kind. And they can get that information right from your homepage. So they come to the site, they look at one page, and they leave quite happily. Doesn't mean that a high bounce rate is bad, per se. Therefore, a good bounce rate, based on what I've seen, is anything between 40 and 50%. Like I said, the lower the better, but don't get too upset if it never drops below 40%. I've only ever seen a handful of practices with bounce rates below 40%. If your bounce rate is too high, though, then just like I said before, you likely have a problem with your traffic and you should get it checked out. Next metric, the average time on site. This is really a simple number that gives you an idea of, on average, how long people are spending looking at your website. Plain and simple. Obviously, the higher the number, the better. I found that most practices have an average time on site of about a minute 30, likely a minute 30 to 2 minutes. Like all quality metrics, you should watch out if this number is too low. And last but not least, the percentage of new visits to your site. This is an often overlooked number, but it is very important to understand. The number basically tells you what percentage of people came to your site in the last month and have never been to your site before. That makes them a new visitor. Now, if that number is roughly 75 to 80%, let's say, which is what you should expect, it means that every month, guess what? Every month, 75 to 80% of the people that are coming to your site have never been there before and will never come back. Why is that? Well, think about it. If you're always getting 75 to 80% new visits, it means that every single month, 75% of the people that come to your site have never come before. And if every month that happens month after month, that means 75% of the people that come to your website will never come back. So practically speaking, you've really got only one shot at turning these people into patients. 75% of the people that come to your website, you've only got one shot. So you'd better make it count. Now all of a sudden, it might seem way more worthwhile to invest in a better looking site or to work on your content more or to do anything to improve your site because it really does matter. As usual, if this number is too low, then something odd is going on. And you should know, by the way, that many of these quality metrics are closely linked to one another, and a problem in one area can usually drastically affect the other metrics. So don't worry too much if your numbers are low in any of these areas. It might often be the same problem that's causing the low numbers everywhere. I often get asked how you can actually tell if your website is generating patients. Now, short of asking every patient, which is a problem in and of itself, the answer I always give is as follows. You can't really ever tell, but here's what you can tell. If you implement Google Analytics and you start to see the numbers related to, the traffic on your site, now you get a sense of what's happening on your site. If you start working on your site and the average, say, time per visit goes up, the bounce rate starts to drop, more people are looking at more pages, there are more visits coming to your site, you'll have to admit that while we can't say for certain that you're getting more patients, we do know that more people are sticking around your site for longer and looking at more pages, and that's likely to have a positive impact. Let's take a bricks and mortar example. If nobody ever comes into your optical, and now hundreds of people are coming and spending minutes at a time browsing, doesn't it stand to reason that you'll get more sales? Now that's especially true on the web when you consider the fact that it takes a split second to click the back button and leave somebody's site. Why stick around unless you want to? Hopefully now you should have a good overview of the basic data that analytics provides you with. The next part of this series will be on segmenting your data and trying to get a much better sense of what's really happening to your website rather than just an overall set of averages.